You sit in the driveway with the engine turned off, but you do not go inside. The porch light is on. Someone may be waiting for you. Dinner may be getting cold. The television may be murmuring behind the living room window. Yet your hands remain on the steering wheel as though the car is still moving. You tell yourself you only need one more minute. But the minute is not rest. It is the space between the person the world expects to walk through that door and the person sitting here now, too tired to perform strength for another evening. Maybe you have done this in a parking garage after work. Maybe in the grocery store lot after receiving a medical bill you do not know how to pay. Maybe outside the home of an aging parent, gathering yourself before you enter with a cheerful voice. Your body has arrived. The rest of you is still trying to become presentable. And beneath that effort is a difficult question. Why do we call it strength when a person has learned to ignore every signal that they need care? You are listening to Still Mind Temple, a quiet place for the mind to rest. In the time we share, you may begin to recognize why heaviness often grows worse when you fight it. You may understand how a difficult moment becomes a difficult identity, how the mind turns exhaustion into self-accusation, and how the habit of always being the strong one can quietly separate you from the people you love. You will also learn a practical way to meet heavy days without collapsing beneath them and without pretending they are lighter than they are. But first, try something small. Wherever you are, gently close one hand into a fist. Do not hurt yourself. Just tighten it enough to feel the muscles working. Imagine you are holding something important. A key, a promise, a responsibility, the future of someone you love. Hold it for a few breaths. Notice how quickly effort begins to spread. The fingers tighten, then the wrist. The forearm joins. The shoulder may rise slightly. Even the jaw may participate in a task that has nothing to do with the mouth. Now tell the hand to be stronger. Tighten a little more. Notice what happens. The hand does not become safer. It becomes tired. Now open it. For a moment, the fingers may still remember the shape of holding. There may be warmth, tingling, or a faint ache. The object was imaginary, but the effort was real. This is one of the quiet laws of the mind. What you grip in thought, the body often carries in muscle. Many people move through life as though they are wearing a winter coat that has been soaked through by rain. The coat was useful when the storm began. It protected them from the cold. But now they have come indoors, and still they refuse to take it off. The wet fabric hangs from their shoulders. Water gathers at the cuffs. Every movement requires more effort. Yet when someone says, "You can set that down now," they answer, "I'm fine." They have worn the weight so long that removing it feels more dangerous than carrying it. When life feels heavy, your first instinct may be to become harder. You tighten your schedule, control your expression, hide your fear, answer every message, solve every problem, and keep moving so no one can see that you are struggling. This can look admirable. Sometimes it is even necessary for a while. There are moments when a parent must keep driving until the child is safe. A nurse must finish the shift. A person leaving a dangerous home must stay focused long enough to reach protection. A family may need to get through the funeral, the court date, the surgery, the storm. Temporary strength can save a life. But emergency strength was never meant to become a permanent personality. The trouble begins when the storm ends and you are still wearing the wet coat. A woman named Claire sits in her car outside a small house in Ohio. She is 48 years old. She manages a team at an insurance company. People describe her as capable. Her sister calls when the family needs a decision. Her coworkers send difficult clients to her because she knows how to stay calm. That afternoon, an email arrived from her supervisor. "Can we discuss your recent numbers tomorrow morning?" There was nothing openly threatening in the message. No accusation. No warning. But watch what happened inside her. The trigger was a sentence on a screen. The first response was not a thought. It was a sensation, a tightening beneath the ribs, heat in the face, a small drop in the stomach. Then came the thought, "I must have done something wrong." The thought became a story. "They have noticed that I am slipping. I should have worked later. I have been tired, and now everyone can see it. I am going to disappoint them. I may lose the position. I may not be able to help my daughter with college. I should have been more disciplined." The story produced a reaction. Claire skipped lunch, reopened every report from the previous month, and stayed at her desk for 3 extra hours. The reaction repeated an old habit. Whenever fear appeared, she answered it with more work. And over many years, the habit had hardened into an identity. I am the person who handles things. This is how the chain forms. A trigger becomes a sensation. The sensation is interpreted by thought. Thought expands into a story. The story demands a reaction. The reaction, repeated often enough, becomes a habit. And the habit eventually speaks in the voice of identity. You stop saying, I am pushing myself. You begin saying, this is simply who I am. But identities built from survival are often shelters we forgot to leave. Claire's deepest burden was not the email. It was self-judgment. She believed tiredness revealed a flaw. She could offer understanding to an employee caring for a sick spouse. She could tell a friend that grief takes time. She could sit beside her daughter after a breakup and say, you do not have to be okay tonight. But when her own body asked for mercy, she became a prosecutor. Why are you so weak? Other people have it worse. You should be grateful. You used to handle more than this. Self-judgment often disguises itself as discipline. It says harshness will keep you from falling apart. It says compassion will make you lazy. It says the whip is the only reason the horse continues walking. But look more closely. A frightened animal may move under the whip, but it does not become peaceful. It becomes better at fearing the person who holds it. When you use shame to force yourself forward, the body may obey for a time. Yet each act of inner violence teaches the nervous system that even pain is not safe to reveal. You do not become stronger. You become more alone inside yourself. In Buddhist teaching, suffering is sometimes misunderstood as a command to endure misery without complaint. It is not. The teaching begins with a simple act of honesty. Pain is present. Not pain should be present. Not pain should already be gone. Pain is present. This honesty is not surrender to despair. It is the end of wasting strength on denial. Imagine walking into your home, wearing that soaked winter coat. Water is dripping onto the floor. Your shoulders ache. Someone says you are wet, and you answer, no, I'm not. Now you must carry the coat and defend the story that there is no coat. This is what resistance adds to pain. There is the heaviness of what happened. Then there is the exhausting effort of insisting you should not feel heavy. The first weight may have come from life. The second is often produced by the mind. One old Zen story, told in different forms, describes a student who came to a teacher after a long journey through the mountains. The student's pack was filled with books, bowls, blankets, stones collected from sacred places, and gifts he hoped would prove his devotion. He bowed and asked, how do I find peace? The teacher looked at the pack and said, put it down. The student lowered it to the floor. The teacher said, now pick it up. Confused, the student lifted it again. The teacher smiled. Now you know 2 things. You know the weight, and you know it can be set down. The teaching does not say that we can abandon every responsibility. A parent cannot simply walk away from a child. A patient cannot meditate a tumor into disappearing. A person facing abuse may need legal protection, money, transportation, and a safe place to stay. Spiritual practice does not replace therapy, medical care, healthy boundaries, legal protection, or practical action. But many burdens are carried twice. Once because life placed them in our hands, and again because we believe setting them down for 1 hour would make us irresponsible. Claire finally entered her house that evening. Her husband was chopping onions in the kitchen. He asked how her day had been. Fine, she said. He looked at her for a moment, then returned to the cutting board. Their marriage was not collapsing. There was no dramatic betrayal. But something had been fading between them. He had stopped asking a second time. When a person repeatedly answers, I'm fine, while hoping to be understood, love is forced to become a mind reader. And love is rarely good at that job. Claire believed strength meant not becoming a burden. Yet by hiding every burden, she also hid the doorway through which closeness could enter. That night, nothing miraculous happened. She did not suddenly explain her childhood or weep for an hour in his arms. She stood beside the sink and said, I got an email from my boss, and I'm scared. Her husband put down the knife. That was all. The weight did not disappear. But for the first time that day, it was no longer carried by one nervous system alone. There is a deeper question underneath. Why is it so difficult to receive support even when support is available? Part of the answer is attachment. Attachment is often misunderstood as love. But love and attachment are not the same. Love says, "You matter to me." Attachment says, "You must remain a certain way so I can feel safe." Sometimes we are attached not only to people or outcomes, but to our own role. The reliable daughter, the calm husband, the successful woman, the one who never needs help, the one who keeps the family together. The identity may have earned praise. It may have protected you in childhood. It may have been the only stable thing in a chaotic home. But eventually you begin serving the role instead of allowing the role to serve life. A man named Marcus learned early that peace in his family depended on his usefulness. His father worked long shifts and came home silent. His mother worried aloud about money. When tension rose, Marcus made jokes. He watched his younger sister. He washed dishes before anyone asked. People called him mature. No one noticed that he was also afraid. At 53, Marcus was still making peace by disappearing. His employer asked him to take on an extra project. He said yes. His older brother asked him to drive their father to a medical appointment. He said yes. His church asked him to help move chairs on Saturday. He said yes. His neighbor asked to borrow his truck. He said yes. His wife asked whether they could have dinner without phones because she missed talking to him. He said, of course. Then he spent most of dinner answering messages about the needs of everyone else. Across the table, his wife became quiet. Marcus was not selfish. He was exhausted from trying to be good. His obstacle was people-pleasing, though he would never have used that phrase. He called it being dependable. But dependability without boundaries slowly becomes dishonesty. You say yes with your mouth while resentment says no in your body. You promise attention you do not have. You offer help, then punish the people you help with silent anger. You avoid disappointing someone for 5 minutes and create a deeper disappointment that lasts for years. Notice the chain again. A request arrives. The body feels a small contraction. The thought says, if I refuse, they will think I do not care. The story says, good people are always available. My value comes from what I provide. Conflict is dangerous. Someone else's disappointment means I have done something wrong. The reaction is an immediate yes. The repeated yes becomes a habit. The habit becomes an identity. I am needed, therefore I matter. This is where kindness becomes tangled with fear. Real compassion may ask you to give. Fearful pleasing tells you that you are not allowed to choose. The two can look identical from the outside. The difference lives in the intention. In Buddhist teaching, karma is often misunderstood as punishment, destiny, or a cosmic scorekeeper rewarding good people and striking bad people. A simpler understanding is much closer to ordinary life. Karma is the direction created by intention and repetition. Each time you think, speak, or act in a certain way, you make that way a little easier to travel again. A reaction repeated becomes a path. A path traveled long enough begins to feel like the only road. Marcus did not choose the childhood conditions that taught him to earn love through usefulness. Responsibility does not mean blaming him for what formed him. Responsibility means recognizing that he now participates in what happens next. He may not have chosen the first lesson, but awareness allows him to question the next repetition. This can be verified in small moments. When you answer a message immediately because anxiety demands it, the anxiety learns that urgency gets obedience. When you wait for 3 breaths and then choose your response, awareness learns that discomfort can be survived without surrendering your voice. Both actions leave a trace. Both shape what becomes easier tomorrow. Karma is not a judge standing over you. It is the quiet way repetition becomes character. One evening, Marcus's father called while Marcus was helping his daughter assemble a bookshelf in her new apartment. His father wanted him to come over and look at a leaking faucet. Marcus immediately stood up. His daughter was holding one end of a wooden shelf. She looked at him and said, "Dad, you always leave when someone else needs you." The words were not cruel. That made them harder to dismiss. He looked at the half-built bookshelf, the screws arranged in a small paper cup, the the open window, his daughter waiting. He called his father back and said, "I can come tomorrow morning. Tonight I'm with Emma." There was a silence. Marcus's chest tightened. His father said, "All right." That was the entire event. No one abandoned him. No family bond was destroyed. The world did not punish him for having a limit. But inside Marcus, an old contract had been challenged. A new path had received its first footprint. A guide may point toward the door, but you must still take the step. For Marcus, the step was not dramatic. It was a calm sentence spoken while fear was still present. That matters. Courage is not the absence of trembling. Sometimes courage is allowing the trembling to sit beside you while you tell the truth. People often wait to feel ready before setting a boundary. But readiness may come after the boundary, not before it. You do not always become confident and then act. Sometimes you act with care, survive the discomfort, and confidence grows from the evidence. This is how the wet coat begins to come off. Not by throwing every responsibility into the street. Not by becoming cold. Not by refusing everyone, but by noticing which duties belong to love and which were assigned by fear. Some responsibilities are yours. Some are shared. Some were never yours at all. And some belong to a younger version of you who believed the entire house would collapse if one person became disappointed. When life feels heavy, forcing yourself to be strong can become a form of avoidance. As long as you remain busy being capable, you do not have to feel the grief underneath. As long as you solve everyone else's problems, you do not have to face the emptiness waiting in your own quiet room. As long as you keep moving, nothing can catch you. But pain does not disappear because you outrun it. It waits in the body. It appears as a headache on Sunday, a short temper in the kitchen, a numb hour of scrolling at midnight, a sudden wave of tears in the grocery store when an ordinary song begins playing overhead. The body often tells the truth after the mind has run out of convincing lies. This is not weakness. It is communication. Your nervous system is not betraying you when it becomes tired. It may be trying to prevent further harm. There are moments when fatigue is not an obstacle to overcome, but information to receive. A woman named Elaine sat in a hospital waiting room while her husband underwent tests after a scan revealed something uncertain. The room had pale walls, a water dispenser, old magazines, and a television mounted near the ceiling with the sound turned low. Elaine held her phone with both hands. She checked the patient portal. Nothing. She searched symptoms. She read 3 articles and 2 message boards. She calculated insurance deductibles. She imagined treatment schedules, missed work, selling the house, calling their children, sleeping alone. Then she returned to the portal. Still nothing. Her obstacle was the illusion of control. This illusion does not always look like arrogance. Often it looks like terror trying to become useful. The mind says, if I think through every possibility, nothing will surprise me. If I worry hard enough, I will be prepared. If I remain tense, I am doing something. But the body experiences imagined disaster as rehearsal. The chest tightens for news that has not arrived. The stomach turns for a future that may never happen. The muscles prepare to fight an event made entirely of thought. You may believe you are preparing for tomorrow, but sometimes you are only making the body suffer tomorrow before tomorrow exists. Elaine's trigger was uncertainty. The sensation was a pressure beneath the breastbone. The thought was, something is wrong. The story became, I am about to lose the life I know. The reaction was relentless searching. The searching became a habit she had practiced in many forms for decades. And the habit supported an identity. I stay safe by staying ahead. But uncertainty cannot be defeated by thought, because thought has no final answer to uncertainty. For every reassurance, the mind can produce a new question. What if the test missed something? What if the doctor is wrong? What if the treatment fails? What if I am calm, and then something terrible happens? The mind's final question reveals the hidden belief. If I stop worrying, I will be caught unprepared. As though tension were a form of protection. As though sorrow would hurt less if rehearsed in advance. But anticipated grief does not create immunity. It only takes today's life and uses it to pay an invoice that has not arrived. Elaine looked up from her phone when an older man across the room stood to pour water. His hands shook, and the paper cup slipped. Water spread across the floor. Without thinking, she rose and helped him gather the cups. He gave a tired smile and said, "My wife is in there." "So is my husband," Elaine replied. For a few seconds, two frightened people stood together beside a water dispenser. Nothing had been solved. Yet Elaine noticed that while helping him, she had stopped constructing the future. She had entered the room. The waiting room was still unpleasant. The uncertainty remained. But reality was smaller than the disaster in her mind. Reality was a paper cup, a trembling hand, a stranger's face, and one breath followed by another. This is mindfulness. Mindfulness is sometimes misunderstood as having no thoughts, always being calm, or forcing attention to remain perfectly still. It is much simpler. Mindfulness is knowing what is happening while it is happening. Fear is here. Tightness is here. The mind is creating images. The phone is in my hand. The floor is beneath my feet. I do not know yet. The last sentence may be the hardest. I do not know yet. The illusion of control would rather invent a terrible certainty than remain beside an unanswered question. But awareness does not demand certainty. It asks for contact with what is true now. In this moment, before the doctor returns, you are sitting in a chair. You are breathing. You are afraid. Someone you love is behind a door. This is painful enough. You do not need to add an entire imagined funeral to prove that your love is real. In Buddhist teaching, attachment is not simply wanting a good result. It is the mind's demand that reality obey a particular form before we permit ourselves to be at peace. Of course, Elaine wanted her husband to be healthy. Love naturally wishes for safety. The suffering deepened when the mind insisted it must know, must control, must guarantee. There is a difference between taking wise action and demanding impossible power. Wise action schedules the appointment. Wise action asks the doctor questions. Wise action reviews the insurance policy, calls family, rests when possible, and seeks another medical opinion when needed. The illusion of control searches the same symptoms at 2 a.m, hoping the 27th article will remove uncertainty from human life. One moves toward what can be done. The other circles what cannot be guaranteed. For reflection, take one fear that has been following you. Write it in a clear sentence, not a cloud of dread. A sentence. I am afraid I will lose my job. I am afraid my child will stop speaking to me. I am afraid the test result will be bad. I am afraid I will grow old alone. Then draw a line beneath it. On one side, write what can be done. Abdit resume. Call the doctor. Apologize without demanding forgiveness. Review the budget. Ask for help. Make the appointment. Speak with a therapist. Contact an attorney. Lock the door. Take the medication as prescribed. Rest before driving. On the other side, write what the mind is only imagining. Every conversation that has not happened. Every rejection not received. Every diagnosis not given. Every disaster filmed in the theater of fear. Then choose one practical action from the first side. Do it with full attention. After that, when the mind returns to the second side, say quietly, "This is imagination, not instruction." You do not have to argue with the thought. You do not have to make it disappear. You only need to stop treating every thought as an order. This is one sign of change. You begin to see a thought without immediately following it. Another sign appears when someone speaks sharply, and you feel the old answer rising, but you allow 3 breaths before replying. The first breath notices the body. The second breath makes room for choice. The third breath remembers the person in front of you is more than this moment. You may still speak firmly. You may still say no. You may still leave the room if the conversation becomes harmful. Mindfulness is not passivity. It is the difference between a response and a reflex. Over time, you may notice that you no longer need to win every argument. Not because truth no longer matters, but because proving yourself has stopped being the only way to feel real. You may listen to your partner without silently preparing the next defense. You may hear the hurt beneath their words before deciding whether the accusation is fair. Listening does not mean agreeing with everything. It means allowing another person's experience to exist without immediately replacing it with your own. At a family meal, A child may be telling a story about school while three adults look down at their phones. The story is not important in the way a medical emergency is important. It may involve a classmate, a broken pencil, and something funny the teacher said, but the child keeps watching the faces at the table, searching for evidence that their small world can enter someone else's attention. Presence is one of the quiet ways love becomes believable. An aging parent may repeat a story you have heard many times. You may feel impatience because the ending is already known. But perhaps the point is no longer the information. Perhaps the story is a hand reaching from a shrinking world, asking whether someone is still there. This does not mean you must answer every call or sacrifice your health to prove devotion. Boundaries can be loving. Care can be shared. Respite is necessary. But when you do choose to sit beside someone, sit there. Some of the most important wealth in life will never appear in a bank account. A trustworthy heart is one of them. A trustworthy heart does not mean a heart that never becomes tired. It means a heart that tells the truth about its capacity. It does not promise what it cannot give. It does not use kindness to purchase approval. It does not punish others for needs it was afraid to name. It can say, "I love you, and I cannot do that today." It can say, "I forgive you, but I will not return to the place where you continue to harm me." Forgiveness does not require renewed access. Letting go of resentment does not mean handing the knife back to the person who cut you. Sometimes the peaceful action is distance. Sometimes compassion takes the form of a locked door, a documented conversation, a therapist's office, a support group, or a call to someone who can help. The spiritual path is not a demand that you remain available to mistreatment. It is an invitation to stop allowing mistreatment to occupy every room of the inner house after the person has gone. The wet coat may contain rain from years ago, a parent's criticism, a marriage that ended, a friendship that betrayed you, a decision you would not make now. You may have become so accustomed to the weight that you call it your personality. I am just guarded. I am just an anxious person. I am the difficult one. I am someone who always ruins things. But identity often describes a pattern as though it were a permanent substance. A pattern is not a prison sentence. It is movement repeated, and movement can change direction. This is where meditation becomes practical. Meditation is sometimes presented as an escape from ordinary life or a performance of spiritual calm. It is neither. Meditation is a place to practice not obeying every movement of the mind. Sit in a chair, on the edge of a bed, or on a cushion. Let the spine be upright without becoming rigid. Place your feet on the floor if you are in a chair. Rest your hands where they do not need to hold anything. You may close your eyes or lower your gaze. Choose one simple object of attention: the feeling of breathing at the nostrils, the rise and fall of the chest, the weight of the body in the chair. Do not breathe in a special way unless it feels comfortable. Let the body breathe. Then notice what happens. A thought appears. You remember an email. You rehearse a conversation. You hear a sound outside. You wonder whether you are meditating correctly. This is not failure. The moment you recognize that attention has wandered is the moment awareness has returned. Quietly name what happened if that helps. Thinking, planning, remembering, worrying, then come back to one breath. Not forever. Just this breath. The mind wanders again. Come back again. This repeated return is the practice. You are not training yourself to never leave the path. You are training yourself to notice sooner and return without cruelty. Begin with 10 minutes. Continue for 10 minutes even when the session feels restless. On some days, sit for 15 or 20. Choose a regular time if possible. Morning before the phone is opened. Evening before exhaustion becomes scrolling. A lunch break in the car. A quiet period after the children are asleep. Consistency matters more than intensity. A person who sits for 10 minutes most days is changing the path of attention more deeply than a person who forces an hour once, hates it, and never returns. This is karma in practice. Each gentle return makes returning slightly more available. Each moment of recognizing self-judgment without joining it weakens the old reflex. Each breath taken before a sharp reply changes the future of a relationship by a small degree. Small does not mean meaningless. A doorway is small compared with a wall, yet it changes what the wall allows. You may discover that strength feels different after some time. It no longer feels like holding your breath. It feels like staying present while breathing. You rest for an afternoon without turning the rest into evidence that you are lazy. You leave one message unanswered until morning because the day has ended. You place the laptop in another room and allow unfinished work to remain unfinished for one night. This does not make you careless. It means you are learning to put the day down when darkness arrives. The world may continue making demands. The wet coat may still be hanging by the door. There will be mornings when you must put it on again. But now you know it is a coat. You know it is not your skin. You know there are places where it can be removed. Claire met with her supervisor the next morning. The email was about redistributing accounts after a colleague's departure. Her job was not in danger. But this is not the important part. The important part is that before the meeting, Claire noticed her mind creating a verdict from incomplete information. She placed both feet on the floor. She took 3 breaths. She did not stay late the night before. The outcome happened to be reassuring, but her practice cannot depend on good outcomes. Another email will eventually contain bad news. Peace that requires life to behave perfectly is only another form of control. Real practice prepares us not to avoid pain, but to meet pain without abandoning ourselves. Marcus continued disappointing people in small, necessary ways. His brother complained when Marcus could not drive their father to every appointment. His neighbor became less friendly after the truck was no longer always available. Marcus felt guilty. He did not treat guilt as proof that he had done something wrong. Sometimes guilt is the echo of an old rule being broken. He learned to ask, did I act without care, or did I simply refuse to disappear? That question changed him. He still helped his family. He still moved chairs at church. He still showed up when he could. But his yes became more trustworthy because no was now possible. Elaine's husband eventually received a diagnosis that required treatment. It was not the worst possibility, and it was not nothing. There were appointments, medications, bills, and difficult conversations. Awareness did not make these disappear. On some nights, Elaine still searched symptoms. But sometimes she caught her hand before opening the phone. She felt the urge. She waited 60 seconds. She noticed the room, the lamp, her husband's breathing, the fear moving through her chest. Then she decided whether information was needed or whether fear was simply asking to be fed. Some nights she still opened the phone. Other nights she placed it face down and reached for his hand. Transformation rarely arrives as a new personality. It appears as a pause where there used to be none. A softer answer. A clear boundary. An argument you no longer need to finish. A night when the phone remains silent and you let it remain silent. A moment of rest that is not followed by an apology. A memory that arises without becoming the entire room. A conversation in which you listen instead of preparing to defend yourself. These changes may not impress the world. There may be no photograph for them. No promotion, no applause, but a life changes direction through moments exactly like these. Peace does not begin when life becomes perfect. Peace begins when we learn to meet life with awareness. You may still be carrying more than is fair. You may be caring for someone whose needs are growing while your own energy declines. You may be grieving an empty chair at the family table. You may have an unread message from someone who no longer knows how to speak to you. You may be facing debt, illness, loneliness, regret, or the quiet shock of realizing that a chapter of life has ended without asking your permission. Nothing here requires you to call those things beautiful. Pain does not need to become a lesson before it deserves compassion. Some experiences are simply hard. Some losses remain losses. Some apologies never come. Some relationships cannot be repaired safely. Some questions remain unanswered. The practice is not to force meaning onto everything. The practice is to remain human in the presence of what cannot be fixed today. Place one hand over the center of your chest. Not as a ritual you must believe in. Simply as contact. Feel the movement beneath the hand. Say quietly, "This is heavy." Then notice whether the mind immediately answers. "You should be stronger. You should be over this. You do not have time for this. Others need you." Let those sentences be heard. Do not fight them. They are old guards at an old gate. They learned that softness was dangerous. They learned that stopping invited criticism. They learned that love came more reliably when you were useful, agreeable, successful, or silent. Thank them if you can. Then say strength is not the same as refusal. Take one slow breath. This is heavy, and I am here. Another breath. I can choose the next kind action. The next kind action may be rest. It may be making the phone call you have avoided. It may be telling someone the truth. It may be drinking water, taking prescribed medicine, making an appointment, paying one bill, washing one dish, or stepping outside for 5 minutes of daylight. It may be asking another family member to share the care. It may be saying, I need help. It may be going to bed before every problem has been solved. When the mind demands a complete rescue, offer it one honest step. Life is rarely changed by solving everything at once. It is changed by refusing to repeat the old abandonment in the next moment. Perhaps no one protected your rest when you were young. Protect it now. Perhaps no one listened when you were frightened. Listen now. Perhaps you were praised only when you were useful. Let yourself exist for 10 quiet minutes without producing anything. This is not indulgence. It is the repair of a relationship. The relationship between awareness and the life it has been asked to carry. The person who changes their life is not the person who finds a miracle. It is the person who wakes up and no longer lives in the old way. That awakening may happen in a parked car. The porch light is still on. Your hands are still resting on the steering wheel. The problems inside the house have not vanished. The email may still need an answer. The bill may still be waiting on the counter. Someone you love may still be disappointed. The future may still be uncertain. But now you notice your shoulders. You notice the breath that has been waiting beneath the armor. You notice the wet coat. And instead of demanding that your body carry it without complaint, you imagine opening the door, stepping inside, and hanging it somewhere near the entrance. Water gathers beneath it. The storm was real. The coat served a purpose. But you do not need to wear the storm at the dinner table. You walk into the kitchen as you are. Not perfectly calm. Not completely healed. Not fearless. Simply present enough to say, it has been a hard day. Perhaps someone looks up. Perhaps no one does. Either way, the truth has entered the room. Outside, the rain begins to soften. A cup of tea cools on the counter. The phone remains silent for a while. And in this ordinary moment, you practice a different kind of strength. Not the strength of becoming harder. The strength of no longer turning against yourself when life becomes heavy. Peace is practiced in ordinary moments. Awareness can change the direction of a life. Letting go is not giving up. Letting go is releasing what the heart can no longer carry. If this reflection brought you a moment of peace, please subscribe to Still Mind Temple and share it with someone who may need a quiet place to rest today.